Everyone, this is Key with Empower Astrology, and this is your weekly check-in for October 7th through 13th, 2019. So it's a new week. We are kind of starting to move at least into the middle of October, and we're moving further into a month that I talked about in my monthly horoscope. So do make sure, if you missed your monthly horoscope, that you go to empoweringastrology.com. I also have the link here in the show notes description. But one of the things I talked about in my monthly horoscope was that October was going to be this month that was kind of pivoting us in a different direction. Why is that? Well, that's because the astrology, Libra season, the sun in Libra, the Aries full moon that's coming up, Mars is in Libra now, it's pinging off the lunar nodes. And when we have that energy activated, especially activating the energy of recent eclipses, we can pretty well know that October is going to kind of open some doors, close some doors, take us in a new direction, new opportunities might come in, but there is a flare of the dramatic this month, and a lot of that is happening in relationships. We are in Libra season. That means that we are in a time in the zodiac calendar when it is all about relationships, connections, socialization. Are we afraid to connect, or do we need people and we're kind of maybe, let's say, doing too much for people and there's not a sense of balance? So every zodiac sign gives us a task list of things that we should be aware of and things that we are, let's say, taking a consciousness of while the sun is in that sign. And Libra season, it's a time to really work on our relationships, and we're really seeing that this week, if not today, because the sun squared Saturn. So I wrote about this in today's update on my website, Empowering Astrology, but also here on Facebook. What does it mean that Saturn is we're kind of coming up against Saturn? And this, I did a recent webinar on Saturn called Facing Saturn, and I actually think it turned out really well. And because I think that Saturn is such a tangible planet. It's very clear in what it wants from us: to work, to make sure things are strong, make sure things are balanced, that we are being accountable both to ourselves and to others, that we are maturing and growing. There's no gray zone on those things. So today the sun squares Saturn. The sun is in Libra right now. Saturn is in Capricorn. And so we have to take a look about how we're being mature in our relationships. Are we avoidant, or are we really sitting down and having the discussions and the communication that we need to have with all of our partners, not just our intimate partners? So I see some familiar faces. Hi, Patricia. Hi, Tara. Nice to see you on the live feed. And if you're watching this on the replay, please also say hi. How are you feeling Libra season so far? So Saturn is kind of really in the mix right now. Again, I love Saturn. Saturn is saying, okay, what's not working in our relationships? What is working? So I'm not saying it's easy. It's a day for commitments, but it's also a day when we have to, maybe decide to do something different with a relationship because we're not being, let's say, heard or seen or nurtured. So the other thing I want to talk about this, in this kind of weekly check-in, is that Mars is in Libra right now, is coming up to an opposition to Chiron tomorrow as I record this. So on October 8th, Mars will oppose Chiron. And Chiron's a little bit more of a subtle influence in astrology. It kind of plays in the background. But nevertheless, it's a planet, and I use that term lightly because it's not really a planet per se. It's a comet / asteroid, kind of a hybrid. But nevertheless, it's an object that when you use it in astrology, at least me, I find that it's a very powerful point to understand what these deeper lessons that we're learning in this life. And I've been trying to convey this to clients, or maybe in some of my writing, what happens when we kind of zoom out on our life? What sort of repeating patterns do we see? It's like it's really hard to shift the narrative, or shift maybe even these wounds that we have when we're in it, when we're identified with it. Chiron, when we can kind of zoom out and we can see the tapestry of our life and all the different threads and experiences and emotions that went into this tapestry, where there are certain areas where maybe there's a rip or a knot or a snag, and how do we go back and how do we fix that tapestry of our life, which we can do. We do that with compassion, forgiveness, letting things go, because kind of the way that I look at astrology, it's this really powerful ancient language that helps us to describe our reality, both on a very mundane level, but also a spiritual level. So I always see from the spiritual level, it's like, how do we as beings in this life grow and learn, and maybe not get stumbled on some of the things that we have maybe stumbled upon in the past. Astrology and the zodiac wheel is a cycle. So every year, every month, whether it's the moon or the year, it's the sun, we return to these kind of themes over and over again. But there's one area, let's say one theme, that you continue to work on, and it continues to be that like one thing that you need to learn in this life. And this is why I really pay attention to Chiron. So wherever Chiron is in your chart, it's like, what is that one thing that you're trying to heal, you're trying to learn, you're trying to integrate? I'm Chiron in Taurus, so that was 1977 to sometime in the 83, 84, if I'm doing my math correctly. And that was all about the pain and the wound around value. So if you're kind of part of that generation, the part of that cohort, then value is going to be a trigger. And people that were born after that, it was Chiron and Gemini. And so the trigger is about being heard, it's about communication. Side note, I'm thinking, I know it's going to eventually happen, but I do want to do a webinar on Chiron because I think it's so powerful. Yeah, Tina, if you have Chiron in Aries right now, Chiron went into Aries this year, hadn't been in Aries since late 60s and 70s. You're having something called the Chiron return. This happens around early 50s, around age 50. And if Chiron in Aries, I've noticed it can kind of show up in a couple of ways, and it's interesting. I do say this from an American perspective. How many children of that era were the children of Vietnam vets? So this idea of Aries, war, Chiron, this suffering, this I don't like to say wound, but sometimes that's the best word to use. How the pain of war, the suffering of war, but that can show up in different ways. Aries is a sign that teaches us about courage, and Chiron can show that maybe sometimes we've needed to have courage, and we haven't. So there's a trigger around that. So yes, looking at your comments, thank you everybody for talking about your own Chirons. When we talk about Chiron, we're talking about really sensitive and sometimes even private material. These are the things that it's like our scar tissue, our spiritual scar tissue. So I bring up Chiron because it's coming up into tomorrow as Mars opposed Chiron, and this might have to do with an old relationship issue that keeps getting hit like a button, or old scar tissue. So it's, pay attention to what's going on. If you are an Aries in particular, or Scorpio, you might be feeling this more strongly because Mars is your planet. But this opposition is playing out all week. I'll just kind of throw that in there. And then also tomorrow, Venus will arrive in Scorpio. It will be in Scorpio, I believe, until the beginning of November, so November 1st. So from the 8th tomorrow until the 1st of November, Venus will be in Scorpio. Now, traditionally, Venus is not at home in Scorpio. It's what's called debilitated in kind of these classical terms of astrology, it's because Venus is in a sign that's normally the home of Mars. Venus is not quite at home. Venus's natural inclination is to, hey, what do you want? Let me make you comfortable. But then Mars is more aggressive. It's more about taking action. It's more about motivation and courage. So, Venus has to kind of get its Mars on. In Scorpio, Venus, the planet of relationships, love, value, now values the intensity and the immediacy of Scorpio. Scorpio is a sign that teaches us about kind of these, life and death issues. I know the D word is a little bit of a word when I mention it in astrology, but I am Scorpio, so I'm not necessarily afraid of the D word. But this idea that relationships, we need intimacy. Libra, sometimes to a fault. I'm not picking on Libra. Every sign has a shadow side, but sometimes Libra can be a little bit too surface. So we kind of barely scratched the surface with this relationship thing that we're working on this week, this Libra season, because once Venus goes into Scorpio, our Libra season is going to start to take on a Scorpio quality. So intimacy, sexuality, facing our fears. And now that Mercury's in Scorpio, how do we talk to a partner, both intimate and non-intimate, what we need? Sometimes that's scary. So it's very scary to make ourselves vulnerable and talk about what we really need. But that's going to be a big theme this month. So do kind of pay attention to any shifts in the narrative, shifts in the story. Once Venus goes into Scorpio, it will be a Venus return for me. So I particularly like Venus in Scorpio, although for me it's retrograde. But it just means that Venus shows what we love, and then Scorpio, it loves the intensity. It loves the psychology of relationships. Now, hopefully not the shadow side of Venus in Scorpio, which is the femme fatale, or using relationships for power and control and manipulation. But I think that we are, especially with Mars opposite Chiron, with Venus in Scorpio, I think this week, next week, with our relationships, need to really dig deep into something that's there, because it's time. Astrology just simply tells us what time it is. We're just reading the hands on the clock, and the hands just happen to be planets. Just looking at the chats, Venus and Scorpio is similar to how Mars feels in Libra. That's a good point, Christina, because Mars is similarly not at home in Libra. Mars is normally about taking action, courage, initiating, and then it's in the sign of, hey, let's make sure, consensus, make sure everybody is getting what they need. So this is something in astrology called a mutual reception. It's not something that I very closely pay attention to. Mutual reception means that two planets are in each other's signs. I think textbook definition is that they both can kind of swap places. That might mean that we're not seeing the weakness so much of Mars and Libra, the weakness so much of Venus and Scorpio, because it still has that energetic outlet to it's the sign that it rules. So Venus rules Libra, Mars rules Scorpio. Just checking in on the chat. I know that this has kind of been a rough season for some of you all, so thank you for sharing your insights and your feedback. Something I wanted to go back to about Saturn, because it reminded me of a conversation I had with a client this weekend, and how she's kind of going through a major Saturn transit, and she said it so beautifully and so clearly. It's like, I need to pull myself together. And so I think that as we go through this week, especially as we go up to that Aries full moon on Saturday or Sunday, we need to pull ourselves together. That's simply what Saturn wants us to do. So, and this is a point that I made in my Facing Saturn webinar, is that there are times throughout the year we have to face Saturn. This could be simply when Saturn turns direct, or it turns retrograde, or when we have the Sun making these major aspects Saturn, like the Sun did today. We are on a technical note, wrapping up a Saturn cycle that began on January 2nd when the Sun and Saturn did that conjunction. So this is more about wrapping something up as opposed to kind of actively dealing with something. When we go into the new year, it's going to be a new time, especially with Saturn conjunct Pluto. It's 2020 might be a very different year for a lot of people, especially if Saturn's a major player in your chart. Going back to Venus, once it goes into Scorpio, it's going to start to make an opposition to Uranus. Now, for those who've been paying attention to their astrology, Uranus has been in Scorpio since March. Uranus has been in Taurus since March, and it will be there for 7 years in the sign of Taurus. So I think that this is a check-in with our Uranus and Taurus story. There is a particular area of our life that needs to be reinvented, that needs to kind of get out of a rut or get out of the status quo. And so I think that opposition might really remind us what we are changing over the next 7 years. I don't have the link in the show notes, but there is an article that I wrote on Uranus and Taurus sign by sign on my website so that you can see what area of your chart is being activated. I don't know, everybody's deciding to call me and text me right now. So anyway, train of thought. So we're coming into the Aries full moon on Sunday. So what I'm starting to notice, Aries can be a little bit dramatic because it's a sign of immediacy and action. It's ruled by Mars. Aries is kind of like fire, and it might be a week where we're putting out some proverbial fires because Aries is kind of like ringing the bell, ringing the alarm. So you might have to kind of act quick or take action this week as we come up to what's called this Aries lunation. There is a part of your chart, depending on where Aries is, where you might have to take action. Aries initiates, it wants speed, it wants movement. So pay attention to what's going on this week. I will quickly go around the zodiac so you guys know where what's being activated at this time. So if you are an Aries, of course this full moon is putting you in the spotlight. So this might be a time when you quite literally have a lot of eyes on you, or you're feeling very activated, motivated to take action. Mind you, Mars is over in Libra, your relationship sign, so that might have to do with relationships. You could feel like you're at crossroads. October might be a big month for you, Aries rising, because this, by the way, this full moon is going to be at 20 degrees of Aries. I'll give you the quick times. It's the 13th of October for those in the US and in Europe. So that's, what time is that? Hang on. So it's 12:47 a.m. for those in, is that right? Bear with me for a second. I just want to double check this Aries full moon chart. That's 5:08 p.m. on the 13th of October. Yeah, that's not correct. And this full moon is going to be at 2:08 p.m. in Los Angeles on the 13th, 10:08 p.m. in London on the 13th, and then 8:08 a.m. in Sydney on the 14th, and then 10:08 a.m. in New Zealand. So you have the times, that's when the exact full moon is. It is 20 degrees of Aries. And if you have been paying attention or are a little bit more astute to where the planets are right now, Pluto is also at 20 degrees. It's at 20 degrees of Capricorn. So This is some really strong energy in this full moon. A Pluto square demands transformation. So something about our relationships has to transform. Transformation means looking and seeing at something about ourselves or about our relationship that we have not previously seen or wanted to see. Pluto is an agent of consciousness. It shines a light on something so that we can see it, we can take consciousness of it, take awareness of it, and then decide to do something differently or integrate that knowledge in us so that we can grow and transform. So Aries or Aries rising, this is very much taking a place across the axis of you and other people. And then there would be issues around responsibilities and direction because Pluto is there in your what's called your career sign of Capricorn. Taurus, this full moon is going to be in your last sign. So when you have a full moon in what's called your 12th sign or your 12th house, it's a full moon where you need to kind of let go and surrender. There's this dynamic going on right now, Taurus, between your physical health, because Libra is what's called your health and wellness sign, and also your spiritual health. So it's a time when the spotlight is perhaps on your blind spots, the things that you're not looking at, dreams, meditation, spirituality. So it's, if there's a habit that you need to shed or let go of, this is definitely a full moon to use that intention for. But do your spiritual work with this full moon, because it's a really powerful full moon to release something, especially to release an old belief, a limiting belief, because Pluto is in your sign of beliefs. Gemini and Gemini rising. So this full moon is in your sign of friendships and community. So you might need to take action or need to do something, maybe with some immediacy, around friendships. There might be something coming up in your social circle. There might be something going on within your community. Because Mars is in what's called your 5th sign, you might be needing to think about, okay, well, how do I be myself? How do I value myself and value my talents and express the truth of who I am? Similarly, this could just mean like you kind of getting out there in the world. But with Pluto in your 8th, you need to look at your shadow side and maybe how there could be some self-destructive tendencies that you're not looking at that may be kind of preventing you from getting out there in the world. Moving on to Cancer, this full moon is in your career sign. So this is a natural time for you within this kind of zodiac calendar for you to take action in your professional life. This could mean changing jobs. This could mean change of positions or needing to take your direction in a new way. So this full moon, it's kind of making that square to Saturn. So you might have to do some negotiating and working on relationships with the full moon. But Mars right now is down in what's called the bottom of your chart, your home sign. So this might also talk about your living situation and needing to make some changes in your home environment. Next sign, Leo. So Leo, this is in your sign of education and travel. So it might be that you were just simply like, I need to get out of here. I need to get on a plane, I need to go to another country or go like the other side of the country. There's a sense of needing to travel long distances with this full moon. This full moon is also talking about what you believe in, what's your philosophy, what's your faith. There's a sense of worldview with this full moon, maybe needing to see things a little differently. So Mars is down in what's called your 3rd sign. So this full moon is about, let's say, getting new information, because sometimes when we know something and we know it a lot, it can create blinders where we don't see other options or other angles. And so this is where, like, let's say, judgment, that kind of negative judgment can kind of make it so that we can't see different points of view. So you might have to take a class, you might have to get new information, just be open to new perspectives, Leo. Virgo, this full moon is in what's called the sign that talks about having to face your fears. So you might need to do a lot of soul searching and deep digging with this full moon. If something is coming up for you, maybe it's something from the past, maybe it's something very old. How do you get the, let's say, the help, the guidance that you need through this time? Because there's a little bit of a, like, this full moon might feel like a little bit of a glance to something very old, old emotions, old material, because this part of your chart, Virgo, talks about your psyche, talks about the deepest parts of yourself. So you might need to take action. You might be wondering if you're safe to be able to face yourself or face your fears. So there's this kind of duality that's going on between having to dive into something and dive into the unknown versus needing to kind of hold on to something very solid. This full moon also might talk about money matters. Moving on to Libra. So happy birthday, Libra. This is a very powerful full moon. If your birthday is on the 13th or just within a couple of days on the 13th, it's going to be a year of a lot of new beginnings and a lot of speed and a lot of change. So this full moon is highlighting your relationships. So whether you're single or you're in a relationship, or just even like how you interact and interface with people on a daily basis, there might be something that you're having to face and to take action. You might need to do some quick negotiation. Libra, that's what you're naturally very good at. You're good at like seeing things from different perspectives and having to kind of do that movement. So pay attention to any sort of, let's say, power games that are going back and forth, or how you're having to maybe meet somebody halfway. But Mars, kind of that Martian energy getting activated in your relationships, it just might bring something to the surface. It tends to kind of bring something to a boil, so to speak. So it's full moon that's keeping you on your toes, Libra, as you celebrate your birthday. Moving on to Scorpio, this full moon is in your sign of health and work. So on a very simple side of things, you might be needing to take care of the body and needing to, take some action around how you take care of your body. So, having Aries in this part of your chart, Scorpio, it means that you need a lot of physical exercise. Aries is your health sign. Aries is an energy that likes to run, it likes to move, it likes to lift weights, it's strength. So how do you kind of get the blood flowing right now, Scorpio? It's not the time to stay still. It's also, because it's about work and projects, you might have to take action on a project. I will say with Mars, Scorpio, Mars is now in Libra. Libra is your sign of shedding the past, letting go, preparing for the next cycle. I mean, Scorpio, you're a sign that understands life cycle, that everything that's born has to eventually die and kind of so be reborn again. So, Scorpio right now until November 19th, you're in a time of rest, letting go and shedding these things. So you might be having to do this dance between the stuff that needs to take action in your day-to-day human life, but also, let's say, take action with your spiritual life and your spiritual health. And then moving on to Sagittarius, this is in your sign of the identity, creativity, how you have fun, and your passions. So this full moon could be a full moon of romance. It's a time when you're really kind of strutting your stuff and you're feeling confident, you want to take a risk. I think it's been a little bit of a wobbly year for you, Sagittarius, so you could use the confidence. So have some fun with this full moon. The energy of the full moon is pointing back to friendships and community, so you might have a lot going on with friends around this time. It might be when you're having to think about the future. Saturn and Pluto are in your money signs. That might also be an element of what's going on with this full moon. Moving on to Capricorn, starting to get towards the end, and I'll go back and check in on some of the questions and comments. With this full moon, it's in your home sign. It's in like the very kind of the base of your chart. So it's a natural time when you might have a move planned, or you're making changes in the home. Because it's Aries, there might be a sense of immediacy and having to like take action on something that's very demands your attention. It's a classic time to move. It's a classic time to make changes in the home. With Mars up at the very top of your chart, the changes that are happening might also touch on career, your professional life, or even the direction that your life is taking. You Capricorn, this has been a bit of a difficult year because you're getting both that Saturn-Pluto conjunction going into next year. So I think that this is a full moon in particular for you to get back to your roots, get back to what's really going to feed you and nurture you, and make that your number one priority right now. Because I know Capricorn, you have a tendency to put a lot of responsibilities on top of your shoulders, and it's like those things need to get done, and then finally you'll take care of yourself, make yourself first. So I think that's the lesson for you, Capricorn, full moon. Moving to Aquarius, this full moon is in your sign of communication and learning and travel. So it might be a time when you're taking classes, you're making a decision about classes, you're making a decision about your education. It might be simply that you have something to say. You might be having to take action or put out fires, and maybe you're having conversations back and forth with somebody over text or direct message, or there's a phone call. It might be a lot of movement this week. You might feel like you're running around this week, Aquarius. Mars is in your what's called your sign of beliefs, and so you might have to really stand your ground about what you believe in with this full moon. Pisces, this full moon is in your money sign of Aries, so you might need to make a decision about your material life, how you earn a living. Do you have enough? Do you need to kind of earn a living in a different way? Quite simply, just basics: roof over your head, shelter, stuff in the pantry. With Mars in the opposite sign and the part that kind of is digging up a lot of deep emotional material, it's like, are you safe? And you might be having to look at a lot of complicated emotions of why you don't feel safe, and maybe why you don't feel safe when you should, because there's kind of some old stuff that you have to let go and release. So that's our trip around the zodiac. I'm just going to check in the comments. I have Sun conjunct Saturn in my natal chart. Okay, Leo, 5th house. Do you think this will make it easier for me to deal with Saturn squares? So if you are born with Sun conjunct Saturn, you're like learning to be Saturn in this life, which means learning to be the authority, learn to be respected, and learn to have a sense of responsibility and status in this life. And because it's in Leo, so you're 1976, 1977 baby, you have to really take your talents seriously. So this full moon, or sorry, this Sun square Saturn is really touching back on an earlier story about you really need to take yourself and take your talent seriously. Good question, Anna. Yeah, Capricorn. Big hugs to Capricorn. Lots going on. Okay, so not a medical astrologer, but it seems like everybody's scheduling surgery around this Aries full moon. I know that Aries, Mars is things that cut. It's knives. This is like classical astrology. So I guess Aries surgery, yes, but I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't necessarily do it around an Aries full moon. It just seems like, I don't know, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Even my dad scheduled surgery around the Aries full moon, but nobody asked me on the astrology. Hello, Janet. I see Natalia, familiar names. I'm just kind of scrolling back to the comments. Good morning from New Zealand. Hi, New Zealand. I'm trying to be better with kind of keeping you guys, keeping your time zone in my consciousness. It's not just Australia. Some, you know, you have 5 planets in Aries. That's a lot of Aries. You probably had a very interesting 2010, 2011 up until just this past year when Uranus went through Aries. Scrolling back, yes, mutual reception. So all caught up. So Pat asked, my friend has an Aquarius sun, Aries moon, and Pisces ascendant, and is having I mean, hard times, kind of a general statement. So I don't have specifics, but just based on the sun sign alone, I know that Saturn right now is in Aquarius, is what's called 12 signs. So it's a little bit of it's a time of shedding the past with Aquarius. You know, Saturn is going to get into Aquarius next March, up until the beginning of July of next year. So Aquarius is right on the cusp of a new life. And so hopefully your friend can really hang in there to be reborn when Saturn goes into Aquarius, because right now they're in the time of, like, they're ending a 29-year story, which is an old story, especially if the person is not already 29. So yeah, I mean, we're coming up to the end of our time together. Again, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a webinar. I don't know if it's going to be Chiron. Yeah, there's a topic that really, you know, kind of everybody's interested in. Please let me know. I know at some point I'll do something on Neptune, probably next month when Neptune turns direct in Pisces. But maybe Chiron is a good start. I could also do something on relationship astrology if that's something that people are interested in. So please let me know. And then, you know, do sign up for my newsletter. Do follow me on Facebook if you don't already. And I'm always available for consultations. So yes, I have client work and we could do this one-on-one. So thank you all for joining me today. I'm kind of having this quick check-in on the astrology this week. I know that it's quite late for some of you all, especially those who are in Central European time. So thanks for staying up. Thank you for all your comments. Yes, thank you, Judy. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Joanna. Nice to, yes, maybe relationship astrology. So time to go. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, sign up for my newsletter, book a consultation. My name is Katie Sweeten, and I'm Empowering Astrology, and we will check in next week. Bye.